History calls it a riot, a sudden explosion of anger, a bell, a crowd that lost control. But riots leave chaos. This night left patterns. People were killed, but not randomly. Violence spread, but not everywhere. Power collapsed, but without a war. And by morning, an entire ruling system was gone, without an invasion, without a siege, without a conquest. Tonight is not about what happened in Sicily in 1282. It's about why the violence behaved like an administrative operation, and why history keeps calling it spontaneous when the evidence says otherwise. The night Sicily was cleaned, not conquered. This is a medieval cold case. The story usually begins the same way. Easter Monday, Palermo, evening prayers. A French soldier insults a Sicilian woman outside a church. Anger spreads. A bell rings. The city erupts. According to the traditional account, the people lose control. Rage overwhelms restraint. Foreign rule collapses in a night of spontaneous violence. This version is neat, emotional, easy to understand, and if it were true, the story would end here. But when historians look closely at what actually happened that night, and in the days that followed, the violence behaves in ways that spontaneous riots simply do not. Spontaneous riots follow patterns. Targets are inconsistent. Violence spreads outward randomly. Momentum collapses as fear, exhaustion, or confusion sets in. Crowds do not discriminate well. They do not respect borders. They do not stop neatly. Medieval riots especially were chaotic affairs. They burned fast and burned out. What happened in Sicily does not match that pattern. Not in who was killed, not in where violence occurred, and not in how quickly control changed hands. The first inconsistency appears immediately. The victims were overwhelmingly French, not just soldiers, but administrators, officials, and settlers. People connected to governance and taxation. Locals were largely spared. Allies were largely untouched. This level of selectivity is difficult to explain emotionally. Identifying foreigners in medieval Sicily was possible, accents, clothing, households, but doing so systematically across multiple locations requires preparation. Random crowds do not produce consistent victim profiles. This looks less like rage and more like removal. The second inconsistency is geographic. Violence did not spread evenly across the island. Some towns saw intense killings. Others saw almost none. The stopping points matter. The violence often halted cleanly at boundaries that matched administrative districts, tax jurisdictions, zones of control. Anger does not recognize borders. Administration does. Where records change, violence changes. That alignment is the heart of the cold case. The traditional explanation relies on bells, but bells cannot coordinate an island. Medieval Sicily had no rapid communication network, no central command system, no way to synchronize action across distant towns in hours or days. Yet similar actions unfolded with remarkable speed, not identical in detail, but identical in purpose. This suggests something already in place. The bell was not the cause, It was the trigger. The strongest evidence appears after the violence, almost immediately. French authority collapses. Tax flows stop. Offices are reassigned. Local elites assume control. There is no prolonged struggle, no counteroffensive, no vacuum. Power transitions smoothly. That smoothness is revealing. Systems were ready to function without French rule. This is not what happens after uncontrolled chaos. This is what happens after clearance. No conquering army arrives that night. No siege breaks the island. Instead, external powers, particularly Aragon, inherit a situation that has already been resolved internally. This matters. It suggests coordination without invasion. The night removes obstacles. The aftermath rearranges authority. So why is the story told as an emotional riot? Because spontaneous outrage is politically useful. It absolves planners, legitimizes outcomes, avoids responsibility. Chroniclers describe anger, not preparation, emotion, not structure. But records don't lie emotionally. They lie structurally. And structurally, the event behaves like an administrative purge. This was not conquest. No army marched in. No city was taken by force. Instead, specific people were removed. Authority was transferred internally. Foreign control vanished. Without a campaign, Sicily was not conquered. It was cleaned. The Sicilian Vespers is not a mystery of violence. It is a mystery of coordination. The bell explains the moment. It does not explain the precision. The most defensible conclusion is not conspiracy, but preparation. Interests aligned, targets were known. A trigger was allowed to ignite what was already arranged. History calls it a riot. The evidence suggests something colder. Sicily didn't change hands that night. It changed who was allowed to remain. The Sicilian Vespers is usually remembered as a moment of rage. But rage doesn't follow borders. Rage doesn't stop cleanly. Rage doesn't remove one group and leave a functioning system behind. History didn't record a plan. It recorded the result, and then explained it in a way that made responsibility disappear. Sicily didn't change hands that night. It changed who was allowed to remain, and that is why this case was never closed.